Welcome to this episode of our podcast, Fear Less, Do More. Today I'm joined by Alison Gwynn, who is the Chief Executive of North East Green. Alison is a real game changer. She's a woman I have enormous admiration for, particularly because she's affected real, meaningful change in our region and in her industry. And today I'm looking forward to talking to her about some of those changes. Alison, welcome and thanks for joining us today. Northern Screen.
Yeah.
Let's start there, because that's what most people will associate you with.
Yeah.
What is it and what does it do?
Okay, so North East Screen is the North East of England's screen development agency. So basically what that means is that our organisation's job is to develop the film and television industry, digital industry, anything on a screen. And we do lots and lots and lots of different fabulous things, but ultimately it's about creating inward investment and jobs for people in the region.
And it's an exciting time in the region for generally because of devolution. There's a lot of focus on the region, and film and screen's really been quite a focal point for that.
I mean, it's been a long time coming.
Yes.
So to have a bit of context, so the screen industry actually is having a few challenges at the moment, not in our region, thankfully, but for decades has flourished. It's it's worth billions to the economy. It's one of the government's priorities. Yet for decades, less than 2% of content made in the UK was made in the North East. Less than 2%.
Wow.
Which is not great. So what that ultimately meant was that if you had real talent and you wanted to make this your career, unless you got a job in RERA,
yeah,
or had the means to leave the region, this was not the industry for you. So what that meant was we were losing opportunities out of the region, but we were also losing opportunities for talented people within the region. And that was sort of a self-fulfilling challenge. And, born in Newcastle, love our region. But it was really, really fair to say that creative industry and the screen industry as part of that wasn't anybody's priority. We're a region of manufacturing, of engineering, now of green energy, but creative industry, that's other people who do that elsewhere. And, creative industry is worth more than engineering, manufacturing, space, chemical, combined. We've done a bit of work over the last few years to change people's mindsets. And I think probably the biggest change was being able to work with the BBC. Tim Davie, the Director General, knew in post, made a real commitment that the BBC needed to do more in the nations and regions. They need to be value for money for their licence payers. We all pay our licence, so let's get some more North East faces and places on the screen. So we were really a bit, I sent a shitty email basically. I went, no, I need to do more in the North East. And Tim and his team have been absolutely amazing. So very, very quickly, they recognised that the BBC needed to do more in the North East. And they were in and talking about what that could look like. And one of the things that they were really, really clear about is the BBC was going to make a commitment to do more in the region. They needed the infrastructure support to make that happen. So BBC came back and said, okay, let's work in partnership. We'll make a commitment to spend 25 million in the region over 5 years. Regional leaders, what are you going to do? So we then were able to talk to all 12 local authorities and the combined authorities to co-invest and support the programme. So it's a lovely acronym, NESIP, North East Screen Industries Partnership. They've all come together. They've been really, in my opinion, amazing, brave, ambitious in what that programme looks like. And North East Screen delivers that activity on their behalf.
So tell us about some exciting stuff you've got coming up as a result.
So again, thinking about less than 2%. So really over the last couple of years, you've got to think about, if we are going to make a change, what does that look like? And it has to be, you need to bring big production in and you need to grow Indigenous people and productions. If you just bring people in, People from outside the region come do stuff and then they leave again. So how do we create a sustainable sector in the region that means real jobs for people? All of our brilliant talent need those opportunities and access to those opportunities. So basically what we've done is we have a film office team. So every single production that comes into the region will work with my team, and we will help them with crew, facilities, locations, supply chain. And we work with all 12 local authorities. So when we have somebody saying, can we just close that bridge, or can we just take that lamppost out, we know who they can talk to at a local authority. So we've seen production grow over 90%.
Wow.
Over 90% in the last 2.5 years. So that's brilliant. We've also got a really intensive skills programme. If we have more production, we need more people to be able to work on them. So we've got a really brilliant skills programme where from the first day you want to work in film and telly and you think, how on earth do I access that? It's just the dark arts. We'll open the doors and go, there are so many opportunities in different departments, in tech and craft, so many different things. And this is the pathway. And then we're also working with existing crew to help them step up and move forward with a career. And actually one of the most interesting things for me is because there's now work in the region, we're encouraging people to come home. You can come home, Pet, there's work in the region. And as a result, over the last 2.5 years, we've seen our crew base in the region double. So we can now service all those new productions coming in. And then we've been working with our brilliant local production companies, you know, from the bottom of Redcombe, Cleveland, up to the top of Northumberland. And actually, because there wasn't an industry, it was really, really hard for a lot of companies, because if you were in London, you'd work in a big production company, you'd learn your craft, you'd get to a certain level, you'd set your own business up. And actually, in the region, we had a lot of brilliant, talented organisations, but they weren't commissionable. They were making things they were passionate about rather than what was commercial. Yeah, so we've been working with the BBC, Channel 4, Channel 5, ITV, multiple commissioners. And again, those local companies, I love a stat, so I'll be chucking numbers at you. So, you know, so going from, I think, one commissionable company in the region 3 years ago, we've had 23 commissions from local companies to date. So that's fantastic. Yeah. And then the biggest difference really is we've got a multi-million-pound production fund. Right, so we're doing all the infrastructure, the foundation, the skills, but the production fund is what's really putting the North East on the map. So what we have is a pot of money for productions to come and make content in the region. It's last money in, it's less than 20%. It has to be a commercially viable project. But the interesting thing for that for me is we insist that at least 50% of their crew are from the North East, 100% of their trainees are from the North East. And for every pound that they have funded, they need to spend £8 in the region and supply chain.
Pretty good return on investment.
Yeah, so come and play in the North East. We're really canny, we've got talent, we've also got money, but by the way, these other things. And that builds a sustainable ecosystem. So, I mean, there's so much good stuff going on. One of the problems that we've got is as an organisation, we have to sign NDAs all the time.
You can't tell
people.
So
it'll be in the Evening Chronicle and all over social media, and I'll be going, we might have zombies in Northumberland. Yeah.
I know how that feels. As long as, you know, anything anybody tells me, even at a party, I'm not allowed to tell anybody else. So it's sometimes you have to just smile and go, oh, yeah, that's good, yes. Hope that other people join the dots.
Yeah.
But we, you know, if you can create, you know, you've talked about a production fund, but looking at it much more broadly, there's so much more that comes out of that, because it's not just those direct creative industries, it's all of the ecosystem, it's the supply chain around that, it's the technology companies that they'll think, oh, well, actually, we've got some technology we could develop in this area and start to do that. It's the training companies who say, well, we could offer apprenticeships in this area. Yeah. So it builds.
It's exactly that.
If you get the momentum going, you can create massive change for the region.
Yeah, and it's starting to, people are starting to believe it's real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think the Fulwell project is the thing that's brought it?
I think it's one, but I think it's a combination of lots and lots of different things. So Leo Perlman is amazing, Sunderland lad, went to RGS, now runs one of the biggest international entertainment production companies in the world, but still has that passion about home.
As lots and lots of people who leave our region
Absolutely.
do.
So, when I'm saying we're bringing them back, engaging them. And I genuinely think the timing was right for Leo because of the partnership, because of that change of focus. So I think it's been an ambition he's held for a very long time, but actually the timing is now right because the screen industry is being recognised.
Yeah.
So the development on the banks of the river Wear is, it's literally going to take us to another level. But we've also got studio developments in Hartlepool, we've got infrastructure in Gateshead, we've got stuff going on in Newcastle. So the supply chain for the industry that's here already and growing is massive, is growing. Security companies, makeup artists join us. It goes up a level when Hartlepool's expanded, and Hartlepool is really brilliantly well set to service Crownworks when that's open. So you have to create that ecosystem. So one thing on its own isn't enough because it's vulnerable.
Yeah.
So what we're trying to develop is organisations, whether that's production companies or supply chain, that have got a global reach. It's a global market, right? So we're not living in a world where it has to be on the BBC on a 7:00 on a Tuesday night. You've got to be commercially viable and being able to sort of deal in those global markets and with the supply chain. We don't want anybody to come and service the screen industry unless you're going to have a really robust business.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. I think it's one of the sectors where the globalization of everything we do has had a massive impact. I mean, I've done lots of media work in the past, and I remember, we'd be doing DVD distribution agreements for particular territories. Well, that's just with streaming. That's just gone now, and you don't. The world is literally your oyster, which is brilliant because it's a brilliant opportunity, but it presents challenges as well. I mean, how do you educate people about what that means for them as a business, about the size of the opportunity, about what they can do?
Slowly, I think is the real answer. And I think the North East is brilliantly placed. I mean, I'm always going to be, glasses half full as an opportunity. But let's look at London, where it's been at the epicenter for production. It's busy, it's noisy, it's expensive, it's a crowded market. People are tired, people are overworked. You come to the North East, there's fresh talent, there's opportunity, there's space. And also you're not moving an industry that has worked in the way that it's worked for 30 years and trying to get them to think digitally or trying to get them to future focus. We're bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and dynamic and bloody-minded because we've had to be. So actually we can look at those opportunities with fresh eyes. So I actually think the North East is really well placed for that change of work. If you worked in the screen industry in London, you'd work in high-end telly, or you'd work in children's, or you'd work in factual.
Yeah, very siloed.
Siloed. And that's actually where they're struggling and where there's a commission downturn in a particular genre. If you're North East, you'll just roll your sleeves up and work in anything because you've had to. But actually that makes you more able to cope with really brilliant opportunities.
So this is a massive change from where things were even 5 years ago.
Yeah.
How long have you been involved now?
7
years. When you arrived on the scene, what was it like?
The industry or my organisation? Both.
In the North East. I mean, you talked about the very, very low production rates in the North East, but
so what you had, so North East Screen was Northern Film and Media when I joined, and you had an organisation that had actually been quite big in the days of One North East. But with the coalition government and loss of funding, I think something like 96% of its funding had disappeared, and they'd battened down the hatches. And you had a very, very small team of really brilliant people who had a really hard decade trying to maintain and keep an organisation alive, thinking the environment would change, thinking the political opportunities might change. And if it wasn't for that group of people, specifically John Tulip and Gail Woodruff, I wouldn't be in this job. The organisation wouldn't exist. And I think for me, not coming from a screen industry background, I just came in it from a commercial background, thinking about how do we turn this into an opportunity. So industry is worth billions. we've got all of this talent, we're at such a low point in terms of work being out of the region. Surely that's an opportunity. Surely we can do something about it. So, and there was nothing to lose. There was 3 months' money left in the bank. You either go big or go home. So it wasn't.
So why did you join if you had 3 months' money in the bank?
Yeah.
And very little opportunity, grossly underfunded, 2% production
No
rates.
plan, no strategy. Why not? Got to make a difference, haven't you?
Yeah.
So that's the
absolutely.
thing that excited me. I'd been in a brilliant job. I'd been at 7 Stories for nearly 14 years, and I'd poured me heart and soul into it. But it got national status. It was exhibition number 36. I was like, and I really looked at, if we had all of these talented young people, where were the jobs? Who was doing anything about the jobs? I thought, oh, well, if nobody's doing it, I'll do it. And I couldn't lose. There was no, do you know what I mean? There was
I suppose, if you've reached the bottom, the lowest end possible, the only way can be up or bust. So, but to take that, that is a fearless step to take, to go, right, well, I either make an impact here or the whole thing fails.
It didn't feel like that. It didn't feel like that. And I don't know whether that's an age thing. But as women, my first job was in the late 80s. I worked for a whole load of misogynist blokes through the 90s. And I just don't care anymore. It's literally, I really don't. It's just like, I believe in it. I'm going to do it. And if I'm not doing something that is big and impactful and is going to make a really big difference, I'd rather be sitting at home giving my dog a cuddle. Do you know what I mean? It's just like...
totally get it. Yeah. I think there is something quite liberating about, when you get... certainly, I feel like I really found myself... in my 50s. That was where I thought, oh, actually, I know myself, and I know what I can do, and I know what I can't do, and I know where I need help, and all of that. And you also, I think you get to a point where you realise, when you've been through a bit, ups and downs in business over the years, and you get to a point where you go, actually, it's very rarely that things are a complete disaster. Yeah. There's usually some light at the end of whatever tunnel you're in.
Yeah, and I think for me, it was, I'm being a bit melodramatic, because obviously I work in film and telly, you would expect that, but I'm obsessed with data. I don't take commercial risks with other people's money, and I really look at sound business. So the numbers told me that, and then I was probably just a little bit gobby and a little bit bolshy, and Tim Davie in the BBC behind you gets people's attention. And I can remember talking to Tim and his team, and they give us 3 months to get the region together, to form a partnership. 3 months. And at that point, so that's Tees Valley, North East, 12 local authorities. They weren't working together on any other sector. So, we pulled together, and I'm not taking the credit for this at all. We pulled together a group of amazing people. Economic directors, deputy economic directors at north of town, south of town, Tees Valley, as a working group with the BBC. And we just rolled up our sleeves and went, right, we've got to make it happen. What needs to happen? And that team of people pushed it through.
So, one of the criticisms of the Northeast as a whole is it's fragmented.
Yeah.
People don't work together. There's, big divide between Teesside and the north of the region. Sunderland and Newcastle don't like each other. Gates of Fields, all of these things. Durham's sort of like the Switzerland of the Northeast in the middle.
Yeah.
But with the film and screen industry, you have done this on a truly collaborative basis across the whole region. So what's the secret to that? How do you make that work?
Look, the right people at the right time, and the scale of the opportunity. Yeah. So the scale of the opportunity was too big to ignore. And the way we got everybody together was because of the opportunity was so big, but it was going to bring benefits to all of the regions. So every single local authority knew that they would have access to productions coming into their region, the people who they are responsible for on their patches had opportunities for jobs, the tourism impact of actually having the place that you live on a screen. So we broke down the economic impacts and could demonstrate that. And one of the things that I do as a business person is I look at who, you're not reinventing a wheel. Who's done this brilliantly before? And I looked around the English regions, and there was some pockets of really good stuff. But actually, Screen Scotland, Northern Ireland, what had they done, had been brilliant, and they were 5-6 years ahead of us. So I just took all of the best bits of what other people had done, just made them slightly better, and pulled it together. It honestly wasn't rocket science.
You're very self-deprecating in all of this. Which is great. I mean, I think that's sometimes the sign of somebody who is really, really, really good at what they do when they can't see it and everybody else can. But you're not a creative.
I mean, I'm a field creative.
Yeah.
So, art student in the 80s. We're talking about it before, weren't we? But I think that's the really interesting thing. I came into an organisation, and organisations like mine have been led by people who've worked in film and telly for years. I didn't have a favourite genre. I mean, I'm a viewer like everybody else is. But what I was really interested in, and what I'm still interested in, is how I can support creatives in their own journey. I'm just the tough love that goes, anybody want to buy that? Is that really commercial? Have you got your business affairs? So it's not my job to tell anybody what to make, but it is my job to go, these are the commercial opportunities, and this is the arsenal you have to actually be taken seriously, and this is the route to market.
Just popping in to say, if you are enjoying the conversation so far and want to make sure you keep up to date with other episodes, then please hit follow or subscribe wherever you're listening. Let's jump back into the conversation now. One of the things that I think that you've said is that you're a person who makes cultural and creative organisations work from a commercial point of view.
Yeah.
So that's the real talent that you bring there. You obviously have an interest in those sectors. You started life as an art student.
Art student in the 80s. I mean, it was lots of dodgy outfits. And, But I tell you something that is interesting. Well, it's interesting to me. So when I was 15, I would leave school on a Friday night, queue up on City Road there and go to the Tube. Right? I had access to culture and music and really brilliant things. That was my everyday week. And that shapes you as a human being. And I've been asked a few times, where did you learn your networking skills and your negotiation skills? And I'll say it was probably clubbing in the big market. Do you know what I mean? It was those relationships and being able to have conversations. I'm also a little bit dyslexic. Which was fascinating as a kid because I would be in top band and they would send me to remedial spelling because it wasn't a thing.
Right. It
wasn't picked up. And I can remember, that's why I was an art student, because I really wanted to do English literature, but I'm dyslexic, so that's really hard. So because before spell checking computers, I would write what I could spell rather than what I wanted to say. And what it did is it wired my brain to think about how to solve complex problems and think about solutions in a slightly different way. And that's the thing that stayed with me. You don't need to be doing it like that. Why don't we do it like this? So it's that fearlessness has come out of a challenge, actually.
Yeah, but that's really interesting. Is that I think that's the real beauty in having diversity of thought.
Yeah.
Because then you get that different perspective, and there's real value in that, in somebody who thinks in a different way, going, actually, no. And I think that happens quite often. Whatever industry you're in, you become institutionalised around the way things are done in that industry. And to have somebody...
But I don't think I've ever had that. I don't think I've ever had that. So I remember when I was 22 and I worked for Tradecraft, which is an amazing fair trade organisation. And I was like proper junior marketing. And the whole thing about Tradecraft, it's a fair trade organisation. So they would buy internationally from groups and organisations who really needed that investment. And in those days, they had a catalogue and that was sold on. And I can remember I must have been 22 or 23. And I was watching the buyers and they had a whole load of products to look at. And there were these absolutely bloody awful blue wooden chicken napkin ring holders, right? And they were absolutely awful. And they're going, we're going to order 5,000 of these because the village that makes them really, really needs the money. And I'd been doing a walk around and I went, I know, but we've got 5,000 yellow chicken wooden napkin ring holders that you bought last year that we couldn't sell. And do you realise you're paying X amount of money in warehouse space? Why don't you not buy them, but take the money and send a designer over there who can work with them to make something else. And I was 22, 23, and they'd all went, oh, well, that's interesting. So
and did they do that?
They did that, yeah. Now, half the time I wasn't listened to because I'm just a kid and what do I know? But it's always been there. It's always been, well, why are you doing it that way when actually... And then as I've got older, and then the sort of proper catalyst has been 50, isn't it? I mean, when you're 50, you don't give a shit anymore.
Gloves are off.
Yeah, gloves are off. Yeah.
But so you went from Tradecraft and you had other roles, right? You were at Centre for Life for a bit.
Yeah. So I was at Tradecraft for 10 years, and it was amazing, but really poorly paid. And I had 2 littlies and no carpet on my Tyneside flat. And I thought, I'm gonna make it in the commercial world. So I went and got a private health car, company car. I was there a year and hated it. I just couldn't bear it. And I think it goes back to, I really want to be doing something that makes a difference, or that's educating or building something. Yeah. So then I went to work at Centre for Life for a couple of years, and that was, again, amazing because that was very, very early on. So I had to deal with everything from ice rinks to giant blow-up dinosaurs. And, and then after a couple of years, I met 2 totally bonkers women who had this idea about setting a centre up for books. And I thought, maybe I could do that. Have you got a business plan? No. Do you know what your visitor numbers might be? No. And I went, all right, I can do something with that.
And I mean, I have, so I mean, my oldest is 20 now, but 7 Stories was like one of the solid places that we went to because it was new, and it did things in a different way, and it sort of imprinted in my mind as.
Can you remember what your favourite thing was?
Tiger Who Came to Tea. There was a
she was amazing. When we did that exhibition, so I'm going off because I'm getting all excited. When we did that exhibition, some people that we worked with were really, really hands-on, and then other people weren't. And Judith wasn't. She just trusted us. And I remember the first time we took her into that exhibition to see it before it opened, and the first thing you saw, well, I'll get emotional, was a photograph of her dad. And her dad was a really prominent Jewish broadcaster who he was on Hitler's hit list, and they got out of a really horrific situation at very, very short notice. She wrote a book about it when Hitler stole Pink Rabbit. And the first thing we did was see this photograph of her dad that she'd never seen before. And then obviously we got to make a giant tiger and put it into a kitchen, which is an exact replica of Judith's own kitchen. So those sorts of things were magical for me, and being able to not only bring that to life for people to enjoy, but then watch families and, dads curling up with a kid and sharing that. It was brilliant.
And you used to have brilliant sort of storytelling as well. So it wasn't, brought the books to life.
Yeah.
Brilliant bookshop. Brilliant, which actually cost me a fortune.
Happy days, because the retail, I was looking at that bottom line. Yeah.
Every time you went in, it was, right, okay. But books were something that were a massive part of my childhood, as I think a lot of us of the older generations are, because we didn't have stuff on screens. So books were your sort of route into a magical mystery world elsewhere. Children's television was only on for an hour a day.
I mean, books sort of not only help you understand who you are and how you fit into the world, but they also take you to places you could never even imagine. So, big fan of books.
So why did you, when you were obviously so passionate about that, and you were involved in a huge transformation project, which impacted on all sorts of different types of people's lives, from providing relief to mothers who just wanted somewhere where their kids would be engaged, to igniting interest in books in young people, to having a regionally iconic building in a place which has since, in Newsburn, which has then since taken off. Yeah. Why would you leave that?
A bit bored. I mean, that's an awful thing to say, isn't it? So after 13 years and taking an idea into a building and launching it and being successful, and then it gets national accreditation, exhibition number 36, and it's just okay. And I'd hit that point where I thought, I've got one more big job in us. And I kept saying, all of those young people with all of that talent, and where were the jobs? Who was creating the jobs? In creative industry, wasn't a regional priority. So So that's the main reason. So I needed, I'm a fixer. Give me the most nutty problem that everybody says can't be done. I'm in my happy place. So I needed that personally. And then I really thought I could make a difference.
So what's coming then? What's the future look like?
So the 5-year partnership with NESIP and the BBC, we are currently nearing the end of year 3. So the real exciting thing for me is it's gone bigger and quicker than anybody'd anticipated. So production's up a gazillion %. We've got feature films, we've got drama, we've got comedy. But we've only just started. So for me, now thinking about that 5-year project as a pilot and really measuring what can be done. So I was tasked by the end of 2027 to create GVA of 88 million and create 1,000 jobs. By year 2, we'd done 40 million and 650 jobs.
Have the targets been raised? Does it want to be in a commercial organisation?
Do you know, we've raised them.
Yeah.
So when you're funded, you've got a response. It's public money. I take that. I cannot tell you how much I take that responsibility seriously. I want to create real lasting change. And then I've gone back to the funders and went, actually, can we double that target? Because actually, if we'd stayed at the same target, I'd be underperforming. So the combined authorities, the local authorities, have again got confidence in what we're doing because we're delivering that economic impact and have got that flexibility. And now with devolution and the opportunity with new government, I think we can use our pilot and have even bigger ambition. And if you think when we started the project, we didn't have Crownworks, the Hartlepool studio wasn't what it could be. So with that investment in infrastructure that's already happening, I can take my little pilot, 40 million, 88 million, and turn it into something that I think has real lasting legacy.
And I'm convinced that you will do that, undoubtedly. So what in all of this, who's inspired you? Who have been the people that you've looked at and have gone, they're brilliant role models. If they've done that, I can do this.
Oh God, what a hard question. I've been inspired by loads of brilliant people that I work with. And I don't know if there's any one individual, it's a whole mixture. So the reason my organisation is successful is not me, it's my team, right? So the first thing I think any good manager or leader has to learn is employ bloody brilliant people who are smarter than you are, who are all different and don't think the same way you do. And then put that little alchemy together and that's how you... So I actually really am excited and admire and am inspired by the people who work with me and for me as much as anybody on the outside, because they're brilliant.
So where do you get your sort of inner energy and motivation from? What do you do?
Oh, I mean, I cuddle the dog and take her for a walk on the beach.
It's just an innate part of you.
And I'm sure I'm a massive pain in the arse a lot of the time. I've done lots of things wrong in the year, over the years. I've learned from them. I've actually probably learned more from really rubbish managers than being inspired by great ones. Actually, I know that sounds a bit melodramatic. But when I became the chief exec of Northern Film and Media that turned into North East Screen, it was a real opportunity that I wasn't intimidated by. I thought, right, okay, so what does good look like? What does kind look like? Working with the London production companies who say to me, well, it's not quite the London way. And I've just gone, well, ours is better. We're kinder, we're more respectful. And we actually introduced a code of conduct. We don't treat people like that. So actually, let's take all of those negative experiences that we've all had them, and how do we make that just a bit better? And how do we lift up those young people behind her?
I think it's a great motivator sometimes, isn't it? If you're in the privileged position where you can make a difference and you can use experiences that you've had that have not worked for you so that it doesn't happen.
Yeah, and I still get things wrong, Gill, honestly.
Everybody does, don't they? We all make mistakes.
Yeah.
Nobody's
and
perfect,
I'm quite demanding.
You get.
But you know what? The potential's big.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's just do it. Let's be big. Let's be brave. let's be world class. You know, one of the things that I say all of the time when I go down to London or whoever I'm talking to, you know, the North East isn't asking for, you know, it's not, please sir, can I have some more? It's come and work with us. We're bloody brilliant. We've got all of this talent. Actually, we're doing you a favour. You just need to be here, and you need to be in that environment where things can happen. And all of that, I think, has been shaped by the brilliant experiences and the negative experiences.
I mean, I think it feels like it's the region's time on a number of fronts.
Yeah.
It feels like there's a sort of, you know, the right mix of all sorts of things.
I mean, timing and, you know, what's that saying about, because I used to say, well, it's just luck, but actually it's not luck, it's just being in the right place at the right time with all the prep, isn't it? So, you know, one of the things that we did as an organisation was I looked at Northern Film and Media's past and everything it had done brilliantly, then everything that hadn't worked, and tried to unpick why it hadn't worked. And those things shape. And then just be really big and ambitious. You know, my predecessor, John Tulip, who was just such an amazing human being, had struggled and he'd asked funders, you know, can we have £2,000 and can we have £5,000 to survive? The industry deserves it. And I just went, we need 12 million to change the world. And that was the difference. And
people obviously like to see that level of ambition.
You know, ambition sells, but you've got to have ambition backed up by a really solid commercial business plan, and then be able to demonstrate you can deliver it. But that's what the region deserves, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, one of the things that when we were chatting before the recording, you were saying you've got two notices on you in two posters up in your house which have two messages on, which I think sort of encapsulate everything that you've talked about, and those are
Shy Bane's getting out, which I still have to explain to Southerners.
It's not very London, that.
No, not very London. They'll catch up. And then the other one is work proper hard and be extra canny to people, because you need to have those things together, don't you?
Absolutely. And I always think that, you know, you're driving performance, high performance, delivering, you know, huge benefits to the region, the industry, and the people within it. But you can do that in a nice way. Yeah. You can be kind. You don't have to be a ball breaker, which is what people always, you know, used to refer to strong women as.
Yeah. And, you know, just, you know, in the last couple of months, we had Tim Davey come up, Director General of the BBC, into the region to talk about what happens next with the BBC. Yeah. And we had Tim in the room, and we had Ben Houchin, our Blue Mayor, Kim McGuinness, our Red Mayor, and we had a brilliant conversation. And there's real shared ambition about what can happen in the North East. So I just think the North East is open for business, and I just think we can do more and more and more. So I don't think we've even started or scratched the surface yet, Jill.
Well, I hope you're right, and I'm sure you will, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens next. But thanks ever so much for joining me today.
You're very welcome.
I loved our conversation.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed that episode of our podcast, Fear Less, Do More. If you did, then please follow or subscribe. If you enjoyed what we talked about in this episode, then you might enjoy this one here, which is also linked in the show notes. Thanks for listening.